as well as the unique coloration of black, white, and gray along their top and sides. It's that coloration that gives them their name. They're known as Pacific white-sided dolphins, and yeah, they're considered to be one of the more acrobatic species in the world. That is a good reason as to why they're considered so acrobatic. But just as that name, Pacific white-sided dolphin, suggests, these dolphins can be found all across the North Pacific Ocean, from the north coast of Mexico up to Alaska and over to Japan and Russia. And because of that wide range, some of you here have perhaps seen leaping dolphins like Helen and Hannah before, maybe even heard these dolphins vocalizing like this along their coastlines. In fact, has anyone here ever seen a Pacific white-sided dolphin before? Quite a few of you. That's not so surprising because, like I said, they're here off the coast of British Columbia. Now, it's only been over the past, 8 or 10 years that we've been starting to see these dolphins with more regularity. So if you have not yet seen these dolphins, who knows, if you take a trip on the ferries between Vancouver and Vancouver Island, you might be able to see these pretty dolphins. So they are our neighbors. They can be found right here in our backyards. And it's maybe because of the fact that they're our neighbors that we're well aware that there's a number of dangers that these dolphins face. And unfortunately, those dangers are something that Helen and Hannah know about firsthand. In fact, both of these dolphins are rescued and rehabilitated animals, but Bobby, Anna, and Charlotte have been working with them for a number of years now and have been able to develop close relationships with these dolphins. So with working with them over years, they've been able to develop a strong relationship with them that has allowed them to be able to achieve a lot of different things in training. Be able to have them comfortable showing off parts of their body that assist with healthcare or husbandry, so that we can make sure that these dolphins are healthy inside and out. And that is so important to us because of the histories of Helen and Hannah. I mentioned that they were both rescued and rehabilitated. Helen was rescued in 1996. And Hannah was rescued in 2003, both from fishing nets. Now, they were ultimately deemed non-releasable, and so they found a permanent home here at the Rock Coast in October 2005. And it's with these strong relationships that we're building with them that we can learn a little bit more about how to better protect them. And that's something that certainly is so incredibly important to us. It's learning a lot more, and really, we've been able to learn a lot. In fact, some of the things that we know about these dolphins is that as a whole, these species, they tend to travel in groups. Now, sometimes those groups might be a little bit on the smaller side, maybe a couple of individuals. I think that's what we're seeing here. But we also know that sometimes these dolphins will travel in groups of sometimes as many as 2,000. And they are often seen traveling together at incredibly high speeds. Now keep an eye on Anna here. She's done a pretty good job of showing off how fast these speedy dolphins can be. They can reach speeds of around 35 kilometers or 22 miles. And that speed, it comes in handy when trying to escape predators. But that speed also comes in handy when chasing after prey. And speaking of prey, perhaps you can shout out what do you think it is that a dolphin might like to eat? Fish, you got it. And we know that these dolphins expend huge amounts of energy chasing, catching, and eating that fish, and even traveling to some pretty incredible depths as well. The only problem, of course, with going deeper in search of food is that it gets a lot darker. But luckily, dolphins have a way to penetrate this darkness by using sound. They can rely on a form of sound navigation known as echolocation, which we can hear here. So these pretty strange sounds, these are echolocation clicks produced by dolphins from within their heads. Now these sounds will bounce off objects in their underwater environment. By listening to the echoes as they return, dolphins can form a pretty accurate sort of mental picture of their underwater world. And yes, we know through research that it is incredibly accurate. Yet even so, it's estimated that somewhere as many as 800 whales, dolphins, and porpoises are found entangled in and unfortunately die in fishing nets every day. That's a huge number, and it's thought to come about accidentally. Probably because these dolphins happen to be swimming around the fish that those nets are targeting. Now, this non-targeted form of capture, it's known as bycatch. It is the #1 threat to dolphins worldwide. But we're trying to learn a little bit more about that threat and how to prevent it through a research study that Helen and Hannah have been participating in for a number of years. Part of this study, they're being used to wearing gelatinous eye cups like this over top of both of their eyes. Now we didn't start off with covering the eyes of our dolphins. We started slowly, first introducing this eye cup to them, placing it on the side of their body, somewhat as Charlotte is demonstrating here with her hand. And we gradually moved those eye cups closer and closer until both eyes are covered. Once the dolphins are comfortable with that, take some time, once they're comfortable with it, we'll ask them to wear both of those eye cups and swim freely around their habitat. Then we can introduce different objects and obstacles into the water with them and listen to the sounds that they make while navigating around them by using an underwater microphone or hydrophone. So by listening to these sounds, observing how they interact with those objects, it tells us a whole lot more about what might cause them to become entangled and how we can prevent it. So we are pretty incredibly lucky to be able to work so closely with Helen and Hannah, to be able to do research here that just couldn't happen anywhere else. But of course, we don't just do research here on site. We do research out in the field as well. And there we have definitely seen that these dolphins are incredibly energetic, acrobatic, and playful. As we can see, right here both above and below the water. And of course, as I mentioned, all that energy comes from the fish that they eat, and they certainly are eating a lot of it because they are such a social species. We see them in large groups all up and down our coast. In fact, most recently, they were found in around Colombia Island, showcasing their amazing and lively nature. And it's maybe because of the large distances that they travel, the big groups that they're found in, these dolphins do have to be fairly distinctive and loud when communicating with one another. In fact, they make pretty interesting vocal sounds that are a bit like this. Now, those are some pretty interesting sounds from these two. Let's give them a nice big round of applause. We have been learning that these rather intriguing sounds are maybe not the only way dolphins are communicating. They may also communicate through big, high-energy behaviors, leaps, jumps, things like this.
Ya lo sé.
I'm sure you noticed that breach is allowed, but so are other things these dolphins can do with their bodies. Tail slaps and things like that also generate a considerable amount of noise that might be used to signal other dolphins around them. The only problem, of course, with relying on all these different sounds to communicate and navigate is that dolphins are not the only thing that make noise out in the open oceans. There are other species, different dolphins, other whales, sea lions, but there are some man-made objects that can be pretty noisy as well. These man-made objects tend to be loud, have big propellers on their back end. These objects are, anyone? Boats, absolutely. And yet, despite how loud those boats can sometimes be, dolphins are still seen playing like this off in front of those large vessels in a behavior known as bow riding. So sometimes those loud sounds might interfere, sometimes I guess not. So exactly when and how those sounds interfere in the lives of these dolphins is something that, well, we'd really like to learn a little bit more about. So by now you might be getting the idea that yes, we are learning more about these dolphins. But yeah, we still have a whole lot more questions. But one question that we're dedicated to answering is how can we help? As we've seen, man-made objects can prove to be a pretty huge threat to dolphins like these. But it's the knowing that's half the battle. Knowing that that's a problem means we can try and do something about it. Particularly every time we might want to eat any seafood. And, well, is there anyone here that likes to eat seafood? We do. Yeah, understanding. Yeah, seafood is pretty delicious, pretty nutritious. We like to eat it too, but we want to do so in a more sustainable sort of way, which is why in 2005 we started a program called OceanWise. You might see these green signs located in different spots all around the habitat, and this symbol on the sign looks a bit like a fish on a dinner plate. Whenever you see this OceanWise symbol next to any menu item at a restaurant or market, that tells you that one, that seafood was fished in a way that reduces the accidental entanglement of dolphins like Helen and Hannah, spinning dolphins like Helen and Hannah. But two, it also makes sure that we're not taking out too many of those fish. We're always leaving enough behind for these very energetic dolphins to be enjoying off our coast for years to come. So if you'd like to learn more about this nationwide program, you can visit oceanwise.ca. Maybe you have an iPhone, iPad, iPod, whatever, an Apple product. There's an app for just about everything, including OceanWise. It's a free app as well, so be sure to take a look out for that. And though, yes, there's still a lot about these dolphins that is shrouded in mystery, it is with the help of these two beautiful, lovely, and splashy ladies that we've been able to learn so much more. But we also couldn't have done it without all of you. It's just by coming through our doors today, because we're a non-profit, your admission, if you purchase anything at our cafe or gift shop, goes right back to research programs like that ICOP research and conservation programs like Oceanwise. That was pretty nice of you. So on behalf of myself, Charlotte, Bobby, and Anna, here's one last beautiful look at Helen and Hannah, and a wave goodbye. Thanks everyone, have a fantastic afternoon here at the Vancouver Aquarium. So once again, thanks so much for joining us. If you do have any further questions, please come on over and ask. Again, I'm Keely. I'll be making my way next to this green tent in just a moment's time. But if you're a bit curious as to other shows and programs coming up here today, I invite you to check our show board. There's one located through the silver doors on my left inside the main building. For example, you might see there that at 1:30 there's a sea otter talk and feed in the otter habitat just behind me. But there is also